your children well. Their father's hell did slowly go by.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Ignite Radio Live. You are with Greg and Stephanie Schlueter
over the 5 mighty stations of Annunciation Radio.
So good to be with you all. We have had so many wonderful, on-point conversations over the last weeks, and you can find them all at igniteradiolive.com. We've had Man Up episode where we've had some godly men addressing the edgy questions and challenges. You wives out there in particular who want to get your husbands motivated, or the men in your life to address those hard questions, send them there, because there's some really good, honest, godly men, and they're not pointing fingers. We're definitely very honest in our story, so that's Man Up. We've had our 7-week family road trip podcast with 2 lovely couples who've said yes to living it in their homes. And again, the premise there is, all of you who are listening, maybe you're going to Mass very faithfully, praying the rosary, you've got your devotions, your novenas, wonderful, but we really kind of recognize in this culture, particularly today, that the heart of religion and ritual is relationship. And we Catholics, most of us didn't learn how to do that well. So that's really what our mission is all about. If you go to ilovemyfamily.us, you'll see these families share it every week as they committed on a weekly basis to talking and praying in their homes, and truly how it just opened everything up and how awesome it was. And it continues, by the way. That is the continued journey. You had that segment. The past 2 weeks, we had sort of previews from our revival in the park. Prior to George Floyd, we had a strong sense that we Catholics aren't just called to gather, but the essence of that word ecclesia, which means church, is not just to gather, but to also go. If we have confidence in the power of the Holy Spirit, that we've been fashioned for His indwelling Spirit, and people are hurting today. They're beset with frustrations, anxieties. The answer to that is relationship with Jesus Christ. There's no other answer. It's who He made us for Himself. We are Imago Dei. We wanted to break out with confidence, and we did this in the park through 3 nights, very powerful nights of worship and story and outpouring. We shared some of those. Again, you can hear those at Ignite Radio Live. Those would have been the last 2 segments. And here we are tonight, strongly moved to open the door to the consideration of homeschooling. Well, for any who've had their heads in the sand or just were on another planet and just kind of came back to Earth, we've had this thing called COVID. And for
really?
Yeah, so for all those parents in the past 2 years who were like, I could never be under the same roof with my kids for more than 8.3 hours, ever. And they were forced to. And for many, maybe right now you're saying, I made it, I need hazardous duty pay, whatever you're thinking. And to some extent, all of us parents, we know it's a challenge. For a good number, and I bet it's many of you, you've experienced a new awakening, a new delight, a new opportunity. You began to kind of consider, what is best for our children. We want you to really consider the question tonight about homeschool. We're not disparaging any other program or any other thing. If you go into a store and you're choosing a particular product on a shelf, you don't need to disparage the others, but you're going to kind of have some assumptions about what makes one product better than another. And we tonight are among ourselves, for those who are asking the question, have a lot of reservations or doubts about maybe homeschooling following COVID. What are some of these questions and how can we perhaps answer them? So just as sort of a sampling of the questions we want to get to that we know maybe in the queue for some of you asking is, number 1, what's this going to do for my relationship if I homeschool with my child? My kids aren't going to listen to me. I have a hard enough time just asking them to put the toilet seat down, or whatever the case may be. Number 2, parents, you may be thinking, I lack confidence. I'm not a teacher. I wasn't trained to do that. That's a question, and we're going to answer that. A number of you may be asking the question, socialization. Where will my children learn how to just engage and interact with other children their own age and adults, and that, if you will, world out there besides the bubble of my home? Socialization, it's another question. Number 4, some of you may be asking the question, all right, how does this integrate with those colleges when they're asking me for information, for metrics, indicators that they understand that indicate how competent they are, ready they are? That's a great question, and we'll answer that. Number 5, maybe mom and dad, you're both working and you're outside the house. Now, we know many more are finding flexible schedules to be at home, but we'll say that's a good question. It's worth us discussing. And I'll say another one, and we will, by the way, please, send in your questions. Maybe we'll do a follow-up to greg@massimpact.us. Maybe we'll have a follow-up episode of this, or we can ask those questions. But the final one that we think is kind of significant And this is maybe more that soul-searching thing of what do I have to give up as a parent if I'm going to homeschool? I don't want to label it as laziness or selfishness, but let's face it, all of us become accustomed to a kind of way of life. And we don't want to compromise that. We don't want to give it up. Let's just keep it very real and recognize that that is a very real reservation, or maybe even for some of us listening, a disqualifier. So I'll submit to you, as we're going to get to that question tonight also, that there's an invitation in all of this to become the best version of ourselves. So to set the stage, really, what is the foundation for all of this? As I kind of gave the example, you go into a store, you want a product, you want to consider what is the basis of evaluating this? Well, number one, as Christians, we believe that parents, by God's design, are the primary educators of their children. So right out of the gates, let's acknowledge it's inescapable that you homeschool in that sense. Every school system and situation that you impart your kids to are merely delegates of your primary responsibility. And with responsibility comes accountability. So what they're learning, their character, all that they inherit through that system, it's important for us to recognize that is on us. So in some sense, to have our kids in a system outside of our school, our homes, takes even more energy because we have to kind of understand what's affecting them and how they're being formed because we are responsible. So some quick stats here that are fairly current. Number one, the homeschool educated child scores 50 to 30 percentile points above public school students on standardized academic achievement tests. If you have questions about the advancement, ask any college admissions counselor. They'll give you a clear indication of that. Number two, homeschool students score above average on achievement tests regardless of their parents' level of formal education or their family's household income. So some of us may be thinking, well, it's the wealthier people who do this, or so-and-so, they homeschool because they're a teacher. This indicates that's not the case. Consider the costs. Point three, taxpayers spend an average of $11,700 on each student annually. The average for a homeschool kid is roughly $600 per student annually for their education. And tonight we've got a superstar friend with us, Denise DeRocher, but I like to pronounce it in the French way, DeRocher, but we'll stick with Denise DeRocher. She is a family consultant with the Mother of Divine Grace. You could find out more about modg.org, modg.org. It has been Stephanie and my beloved experience with this program that has done wonders for our children, our beautiful 6 children and one looking on from on high. And I will just say with 3 of them out of the nest, if you will, just as a primer, the 3 eldest who graduated from high school, all 3 had the equivalent of full tuition scholarships emerging from this program. All of them have been in intense, if you will, academic atmospheres post high school and are excelling. They're doing extremely well.
Except Joseph.
Well, Joseph is always excelling where he's at, right? He's at
but
Damascus.
Academia.
And well,
Spiritual
okay,
academia.
but in a sense, Stephanie, would you not agree that the purpose of this is to discover identity and to live it fully and completely? So you're already making a great point, though, that, it's not just positioning them in college to get full scholarships and to do well. For those who are listening, yes, that's a good point. But bigger than that project is, who am I in Christ? Discovering that and living it fully, and undeniably, Joseph clearly is intellectually curious. He studies, he researches, he's making things happen. He kind of founded this Damascus Worship. Check it out on Spotify and all these places. Started the Worship Context for Catholics. He's been on National Catholic Register, Legatus Magazine. So he was set up and given wings in the sky through parents' cooperation with this program. So I'm going to push back on you and say, anybody who's listening here, and we're going to be edgy here, we like this. This is part of an education experience. You're getting it live, that we can have meaningful dialogue and conversations and critically think about the purposes. So
now it's time. I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Denise DeRocher, who is not only, as Greg said, this amazing, wonderful consultant for Mother of Divine Grace, but truly just a real guru to us, a sage.
I picture a mountain.
Yeah.
Catholics don't.
But a dear friend, a true disciple, and a beautiful sister in Christ that I personally have been blessed with, and certainly our whole family and each one of our children. So welcome, Denise.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm a child of both educators, so kind of grew up with I would say kind of a natural approach to education in the home. They thought they were where the buck stopped, that they were the ones before the Lord, that were going to bring their kids up, even though we went to school. And so my sister actually started homeschooling. This is now 20 some years ago, my little sister. And at that point, homeschooling was pretty unheard of. Not like it is today. And we have twin girls, my husband Ben and I, who is not an educator, but was always somebody who, unlike me, I think I was a little bit more like, what would the neighbors say?
Right.
And what would my friends say? He's not like that. So much. He's like, well, what's the best thing to do here? So in that way. And then we went and looked at some Catholic schools, very good teacher orchestrating a classroom of 30 students. And I just was struck by that's not too efficient. 20 years later, we got with Mother of Divine Grace. It involved our whole family in a beautiful Catholic formation that neither Ben or I had. He was at that point not Catholic. We sort of went along with the kids in reading it. Mother of Divine Grace, it's a beautiful curriculum. It catechized us. He did convert to the faith. Beautiful. And our girls, we're grateful for that. And like you said, it's a beautiful, challenging, excellent in the best way academic program. So I became a consultant for them about 10, 12 years ago. And that's how I met you, beautiful Schluter family.
Yay.
And yes.
So awesome that you are with us, Denise. And again, for those who are joining us, you're with Greg and Stephanie Schluter. Our guest is Denise DeRocher. She's a family consultant with the Mother of Divine Grace. It's a homeschooling program. You can find out more on modg.org. And I must state, which is fairly current in the last 5 months, and Denise, just let's get this stat out there. What percent has Mother of Divine Grace grown in the last 5 months?
They're 900%. So that's astronomical.
Yes. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Denise, I want to just comment quickly. Thank you for sharing your beautiful story, at least touching on it. But the word that stuck out to me, that I encourage our listeners to really pray on as they're listening to this show, is openness. There was a leading, but there seemed to be with both you and Ben just an openness. Like you weren't like set on this or on that, but you explored and remained open. So I guess I ask our listeners to do just that as they're hearing more of your story and more of the beauty in particular of Mother of Divine Grace, which certainly, this is more of, the name of this episode is Bringing It Home. Why not homeschool? But you and I certainly both have a special place in our hearts for Mother of Divine Grace. And I don't think there's a finer homeschooling curriculum out there that we've been blessed with that just for us has incorporated the fullness of it all. Certainly there's no perfect anything. But again, listeners, I encourage you to latch on to that openness that Ben and Denise, had as they were making their decisions. Because I don't think we had that in our decision early on.
So let's go into that quickly, Steph, just our personal short testimony as to why we chose homeschooling and then Mother of Divine Grace having moved to Ohio. And I will just launch that by saying, as our eldest, Anne-Marie, was born, of course, all parents know that delight. It starts there, right? You know that you're pregnant. It starts there, praying with and for this child, this soul destined for eternity. And you so much want what's best for them. And as we thought about school, I will say it was not uncommon to come out of my mouth, there's no way in HE double toothpicks we're going to homeschool our kids.
Well, let me
and
fill
it wasn't,
that in.
But it wasn't out of, I will say this, it wasn't out of, maybe selfishness or all of that. It was just simply we wanted to impact and be maximally engaged in a system. That's my only dad part, because I'm going to be a small footnote in this conversation. I wanted to be effective and impactful, as we still do and are, but through the school system.
So as Greg said, we were not planning on homeschooling ever, period. And for us, we were blessed to be very familiar with the homeschooling world, both sides of our families. Lots of friends we knew homeschooled, so it wasn't foreign to us. And we saw beautiful examples of homeschooling and also not so great examples of homeschooling. So it was the mixture. So it wasn't like this is awful or this is great. We felt very much we wanted to be, leaven in the world and light of the world. And we're going to get in there and make that difference. And we're going to be, certainly that didn't change, but like that was kind of our naivety, maybe.
Our guiding passion.
So enter, brick and mortar school, which had some beautiful blessings to it, but it certainly seems like a battle from the get-go. In that light of the world and leaven of the world, we weren't willing to throw our daughter to the wolves, so to speak.
Thanks for being honest, because it may not be everybody's case, and for many, it isn't simply like a negativity, but candidly, in one of the top Catholic school systems, we were experiencing a systematic shadow in the classroom. It was like that whole Pink Floyd song, "Dark sarcasm in the classroom. Teachers leave them kids alone." No, so we did have a pretty pronounced negative dotted experiences that made us recognize
one after the other.
But and then it was per child. Like it was, I'm diving on your parade.
No, it's okay.
But it was okay. We need to consider this. You tell that story, and just for this child, and just for this year.
So Annie, our oldest daughter Annie, was in there. I think we made it through second grade. First grade was definitely the toughest, and unfortunately, some schools who have teachers in there who should have retired a long time ago. Unfortunately, this was also a religious sister, which made it all the more sad in many ways. And then Joseph comes along, and he had other needs where he was off the charts bright and was so bored. And so we were kind of experiencing that aspect of it. And because, as I said, we had family members who homeschooled and other friends, Annie was literally begging to be homeschooled. And my cute little motherly answer to her was, "Oh, honey, we'll pray about it. And if God's calling us, we want to be open."
We weren't being honest. It's good to say that
Yes.
for parents right now who may say, "I'm open to it." We stated that.
But it wasn't really true.
We weren't honest with
We
ourselves.
thought we were, but not really. So certainly not what you explained, Denise, as you were searching and looking and such. And now we were blessed, as a reminder, with 6 children in 7 years. So we were in full-fledged parenting mode and formation mode in that way, and 3 in diapers. And as Annie's 3rd grade year was approaching, my dear, wonderful husband said to me in August, "Steph, I really think God is calling us to homeschool. Could you pray about it?" And I looked at him, and I think literally my words were, "Are you high?" Like, what? And so, but it hit me enough where I was like, he goes, "I really just believe that we need to do this for Annie's soul, for her spirit, for everything. We'll just do it a year, try it." And he acknowledged also, this falls almost completely on you. So it could never be anything that I would dictate or force. It has to be a prayerful discernment. So I feel like at that point was the first time our prayer truly became sincere. Lord, guide this decision. Allow me to be open. Allow us to be open. And in that prayer, what I felt so strongly the Lord saying to me was, you need to submit. And I don't mean that in a as many people might take that as, submissive in a negative way. Your husband wants you to do this, therefore, kowtow. But just prayerfully trust me under the mission of
That was good.
Greg. We didn't even practice that, which is under the church, under Christ. And so certainly it's a joint thing. And so when we told Annie, she was so excited, but her initial response to us was, "How did you know?" It wasn't like, "Yes, I got my way." It was like, "How did you know this was God's will? Like, this is awesome." And
So we're giving witness. That was education in itself, right?
And let me
Of
say
discernment.
something for, I feel like I'm stealing Denise's time. I want to hear from Denise.
Oh,
but
no. I'd love to hear this stuff.
So for parents out there who say, "Oh my gosh, I can't even do a worksheet with my kid. Like, how am I supposed to, homeschool all day long?" So I remember feeling that a bit with Annie because, I would help her with her homework, but I wasn't doing it the way that her teacher showed her, so it was just like this whole mixture. So it was a battle to do homework together. And so I had that experience also. So certainly that was in my mind of, oh my gosh, how is this going to work? How is she going to listen to me? How are we going to get along? I don't want to compromise my mothering of these little ones running around either. And so like that was all kind of factoring in. But as soon as I said yes to the Spirit, in that spirit of openness, it was literally within days that there was such a great sense of peace. And it wasn't perfect, but it was like truly a sense
This is right.
of
This is good. God will
rightness.
lead.
Like God is in this, and I just need to remain open and follow. And our son Joseph, who was loving school at that time, he was like, "You're not homeschooling me, are you?" And we're like, "No, never. This is just a 1-year thing. We're going to rebuild so much of what was crushed in Annie and build some confidence and just many different things." Let me say that by Christmas of that year, Joseph was begging to be homeschooled.
And not out of negative reasons. You just saw the delight and the culture and the occasion. I just have to, in the timeline of this conversation, Steph, as I encouraged you and I speak to the fathers, I have seen too many fathers who have kind of like been hands off. Hey, you go get it, honey. I'm all about homeschooling and whatever they associate that with. And I'll just use the appropriate word. I've been kind of disgusted by that, dismissive father. You go do it, and I'm not involved. Clearly this has rested substantially on Stephanie, but the quality of a husbandly, fatherly engagement, love, encouragement, asking questions, making opportunities for Stephanie to just have time outside and away was absolutely very significant to me. I'll say also a mindfulness that my role, which I really love to assume, was stretching them all the further beyond the curriculum, was to ask questions, to encourage library books, and that they got out and have meaningful conversations. And, some dads, my brother, Nathan, is a professor at Hillsdale, he's deep dive, 6 a.m., teaching his kids Latin and all that. Well, God bless you, Nate. I mean, that's awesome. And
everyone's looks different.
And they're awesome kids, impressive kids. So they're very active dads. I just personally was not involved there, but I just have to say strongly, and there goes my computer. So our computer just thought it would imitate our country's civility, and it completely shut down altogether. No, it's not true. But there's redemption, there's restoration, and we're going to persevere because we know good things are happening here with Greg and Stephanie Schlueter and our wonderful guest, Denise DeRocher. Our subject is homeschooling, bringing it home. Why not? Consider it. And you can find out all of our programs at igniteradiolive.com. So we're kind of addressing the main issues, and we really want to get to Denise. We kind of are speaking, Steph and I, about our own story, and I'm just going to put her to kind of take us up to present day in this journey of homeschooling with the Schlueters.
So fast forward, we fell in love with homeschooling quite quickly, and just decided that that's where the Lord was calling us to with each of our children. And we thought through 8th grade, and then send them off, right, to high school and brick and mortar and et cetera, et cetera. Again, kind of not even considering where God was calling us to in that. I hate to admit, but humbly admit, didn't even think about it. It was like, yes, we're called to do this through grade school, and here we are. And so Annie finished very beautifully, went to high school in Erie, Pennsylvania. We moved to Ohio, and here's the fast forward moment. Our circumstances changed that next year, and so we were left with, oh my goodness, Catholic education is not an option. Our public school, we didn't feel was an option for us, and where are we going with this? Well, shout out to Bob and Jean Weisenberger. Woo woo. Many of our listeners know them and call them friends, but they had been using Mother of Divine Grace for many, many, many years. Mm-hmm. And here we were again in a situation where it was like, okay, we need to make a decision now. Lord, where are you leading us? And this beautiful conversation and witness of the Weisenberger family who loved classical education. And I had not heard a whole lot about it, but in particular, the way that Mother of Divine Grace flushed it out. Mm. And so it was kind of one of those things of, okay, Lord, we're trusting that you have answered our prayer in this way. And oh my goodness, I could go on, but let me just say that praise God for the gift of Mother of Divine Grace for our family. Praise God for Laura Berquist. Praise God for Denise DeRocher, and these wonderful people that the Lord has blessed our children's lives with, our lives with. And I think it could be summed up by saying this. I believe this, but it's beautiful to hear our children say this. I wish we would have discovered this early on in our
Yes,
homeschooling
yes,
worlds,
yes,
because it is
yes.
so beautiful. And the earlier you start with it, I think the more beautiful and full it is. So we discovered it again going in to high school. And so we were able to start our kids, the junior high, middle school, I guess, the younger ones. But just what a gift. And I just encourage all of you, as we turn the mic over to Denise in a moment here, Mother Divine Grace, check it out, modg.org. .org. I don't want to mess
maybe
it up.
.com also. So, folks, I listed some objections, if you will, that we all have in the process of making good decisions as a basis of evaluating them. We're obviously considering homeschooling and inviting you to prayerfully be open, again, with the goal of forming our children optimally for what? To be fully human, fully alive, for eternal life, to be the best versions of themselves. That's the end in mind. Let's acknowledge right out of the gates that that's going to involve sacrifice. By virtue of God blessing us with children, let's recognize the sacrifice of the Mass, right? Sacrifice is a good thing. Literally, the word means to make sacred, sacrifice. What a blessing to recognize the gift of sacrifice for the purpose of those whom we love coming to know who they are in Christ and to live it out. So all of this, no matter where you're at, we all know this in life, is going to involve sacrifice, and invariably, yes, faith and reason. It's not unnecessary sacrifice, but in general, sacrifices that are greater tend to produce greater results. We know this with athletes. We know this with business. We know this in many other regards. Many books have been written about this. So don't let the prospect of sacrifice keep us from considering, Lord, what is your will? So number one objection, I moved this, it was number 6 when I read it, but I'm going to make it number 1. Denise, let's speak to that objection of parents who are saying, I'm so used to my time, my space, my vision of my life. I'd go crazy with my kids. Are you kidding me? And the opportunity that, in fact, this may be to becoming a better version of themselves.
Well, I think what you said about relationship is certainly true, and that ultimately I say, like, there is no escape. If your kids are gone all day long, 5 days a week, in the end, you're still where the buck stops. You're still the one before God that's been given the job of raising your kids up. That's unavoidable. So how you're going to do that, you need to, as we've been saying, open your mind to what's the best thing for this child or for our children. And prayer, like you said, Stephanie, is something to be truly open, and it's okay to try it out. Kind of like, we're going to do this, and then there's going to be no turning back.
Right.
And a lot of people
Great
have
point.
that in their mind. God works slowly. It's okay to say, for this year, we're going to do this, and then things open up or not. So you were asking, Greg, specifically there about, what about dying to yourself? It is difficult. The piece you were talking about, Stephanie, being confirmed in the decision and the joy that comes along with homeschooling, it is not every day. There's a lot of struggles that, relationships are hard, but there's a deep sense of this is right. And it isn't, as we were talking, before the show, it isn't, I'm home with my kids all day. There's often a lot of community around. There's tutoring, a lot of tutoring, a lot of sharing gifts. What you were talking about, Greg, with what you do with your kids. I mean, the dinner table is huge, that you have time as a family to have dinner table discussions. And in our family, Ben's an engineer, so there were certain things he did with the kids, like, a little bit more of math at some points, or scientific experiments and things like that. But he was our spiritual leader. And like I alluded to earlier, he was the one that said, I think this is a good option. So go one step at a time. I would say God will lead you. And it is the biggest thing we do for our children, that decision of how they're going to be educated once they get to that age. I love the title of the show, Why Not Homeschooling? There is nothing natural about the institution of it. Education, how a person learns, is age old. And I was struck in all the little things that led me to homeschooling by a quote. It was by Plato. By education, then, I mean the means by which, I'm not quoting it perfectly, by which a person learns to love what they should love and abhor or hate what they should hate. And I thought,
good.
That's true. You're training their will. Sure, these subjects, there's all these subjects and all these, you might say, boxes you have to check, but in the end, you're disciplining their will. And that means disciplining our own. And that's a hard thing because many of us are like, well, I like to chill for a long time. I need the break. It is a hard thing, and like you said, Greg, but I think you want to train the discipline. Like my child won't do a worksheet for me. Well, that's the problem. That's not one you can run from. That's a struggle in the will and how to do that. So that is a hard thing. And there's many days, Stephanie can attest to this, where I'm like, get me out of here. It'd be easier if they were in school. Those days will come, but so will deep days of deep joy and delight to see, and the kids confirm it. I mean, we have a similar story, even though to your Annie's, one of our girls they were in kindergarten, and she said, at first they want to teach me my ABCs. I already know my ABCs. She was about 5. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Then they're going to tell me my numbers. Teach me my numbers. I already know my numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then they're going to tell me all about love. Love, love, love. I already know all about love.
Age 5.
And so I left that room going, I don't know about the love part. We had a long way to go on that. Or still do. But the other things that sort of struck me, she saw something there, and not that, we're going to do whatever our kids, but that worked on me. Like, why are we doing this? What does an institution and a school have? And there are many good ones out there, but same thing with classical education. And that's what Mother of Divine Grace is, if that connection is made. It's a classical education that studies real history, which in the last 50 years has been taken out of. Not all. There are many good Catholic schools that are following the classical mode. Thank God. Praise God.
Dismissed,
Wonderful.
mythologized, reduced, and its icon is Portland, Oregon. Let me just say that that is a portrait of folks, you want to disregard classical education or what you may call conservative, which that term doesn't apply, just the goodness of the human person, that objectively there's a good and a bad. If you're going to disregard those things that are the core of classical education, what you get is a culture and a civilization that looks like Portland, Oregon, or Chap or Chaz or all these other places. I'm not even being disparaging. That is the heart of, if you will, a parentless, fatherless, uneducated, unwilling to acknowledge objective truth of the good of the human person society. That's what we got.
That's true. And history, which is his story, it's the story of truth of what's happened, was sort of, when I was in school, and that's another thing. I don't know if we've touched on this, but Ben and I did not have a classical education, or I would say, not a real education. I thought the world started in 1900, and that's not the truth. And we want our kids to know the truth. What is the nature of man? What is the nature of government, which is so important in these times?
Right.
How should a just man behave in an unjust government and be a citizen first, of God's kingdom, and then of follow the law. So balance and all that. And it's a time for waking up and saying, what are we teaching the children?
Denise, this is all so good. And I want to just maybe put in front of our listeners an image of a compass. So we've got a wilderness, we've got woods, and analogously, we are equipping our children with this compass that points due north. And we all know what happens when you have magnets around that compass. It pulls that needle in a different direction. So schools, to a significant extent, that compass is their soul, that compass is their conscience, that compass is sort of their ability to critically evaluate what is around them. Now, what happens if you take a magnet and it's even slightly off of due north? The first 2-3 steps, not a big deal. 10 steps, maybe even not a big deal. 100 steps, let's go a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and you have the situation that we're in right now. There's been a lack of reverence or regard for the nature of the human person whose compass is meant to point due north for the good of the person. Now, as Catholics, we believe that God designed all this. And as you adequately, importantly point out, that our country was founded in this participation in divine law, this nature's participation in divine law, without which it's rendered absurd. I'm throwing a lot of big words out. But for parents, ask the questions. Let's just keep it really honest. Are children emerging from what school systems with an intact compass that is pointing them morally in the right direction? And let me just throw a hardball. If we're disregarding, for instance, sexuality and God designing man and woman in his image, and we're stating secondarily, and this is very pervasive, let's just keep it honest, if they're learning that, sexual self-control, and we'll just say virtue, is not a value. Let me just state that again. If we do not value sexual self-control, then we've got nothing to say about marital infidelity. And we get nothing to say, quite frankly, with that principle about rape. Now, they want to isolate that and only apply it selectively to appease cultural gods, if you will. But as we see, that principles do matter. Formation in those principles matter. They do have a factor in a healthy wiring for marriage, for family, for culture, for world, for civilization. These things are all woven together, not just for a student's intelligence and getting a job. We're talking about forming children to be adults, to be participants in civilization, literally, as Pope John Paul II said, to build a civilization of love, which means kindness. Yes, it means regard and consideration for people's struggles and challenges. It means we acknowledge that we struggle, each of us, with our own, our emotions and those sorts of things. But parents are the primary context. Their homes are the primary place. Whether they go to a school or not, homes are inescapably, incontrovertibly the primary place where that formation takes place, without which we will continue to see the decline of civilization.
Well, and the whole beauty of classical education, in particular through Mother Divine Grace for us, has been the acknowledgement of the formation of thought, right? So how to think properly, that there is an order, that it's more than just an accumulation of facts and this, that, and the other thing. And I love, I don't know if it's who first said it, but the whole idea of classical education of, beginning in wonder and ending in wisdom,
like
and
that.
just that rhythm and the order with it. And, it just encompasses so much more. It's a formation of thought, as God designed it, and which again is just so beautiful and so good. And to use those, with the ultimate end in mind, right? So to discover one's vocation so that those gifts and skills and virtues are ordered properly to our ultimate becoming saints, right?
Folks,
to know and love and serve God here in this world, to be with him forever in the next.
Folks, I want you to hear, those who are listening right now, the excitement. The excitement of knowing our mission as parents that I stated in the beginning, to form our children to be the best versions of themselves now and through eternity. The excitement, the opportunity that homeschooling, Mother of Divine Grace, offers for us to be attuned to these beautiful, unique souls and to see those seeds planted and cultivated into excellence. It was so exciting for me to see Anne-Marie emerge with such ability, not only in the way she thinks about the world and her writing and her speaking and those gifts, and then Joseph with music and the same thing, John Paul starting a podcast, each of them, a long journey, right? And none of us, the beauty is the journey is one of ever greater perfection, but to see them connect with the reason they're on this planet and to cultivate those gifts and these building blocks in the home that are a place for that to happen. So I want to go to kind of a second objection. And Denise, you so beautifully in your response to the first one kind of captured almost all these, but I want to focus maybe on some of these other objections that parents may have right now. Another big one is the parent-child relationship. And that's those parents right now who are saying, my goodness, I just spent 15 minutes with my child trying to get them to do their math thing for school, and you want them to be at home with me, for me to manage this thing? That's an objection for some moms and dads right now. Let's speak to that.
Well, I think that some of that is natural, especially as children grow, and I think Mother of Divine Grace was really important. It's a unique feature of it, and Steffi and I have been blessed to share this relationship, is that they are assigned a mentor. I had one, like I am to you, Stephanie. I had one, and I could share some of these some of these tensions and get advice, and sort of to know that that's natural. And again, that there's no way around that. Learning is pleasant by nature. Children want to learn. Working out those things, I think, listening to their heart instead of what they're saying. I mean, a teen will say, well, I don't want you to hug me. And do they really mean that? Filtering or figuring out where that is. Also, I think Mother Divine Grace has helped me a lot philosophically with understanding that you want to encourage your child, study your child. What do they need before God? What do they need? Often it's a little bit of pressure, but do not push them to the point. But reading them, no one does that better than your child. And I'm sorry, than you as a couple. And sort of, so I would say points where and Mother Divine Grace again is set up for this, where you reflect at certain points. How is it going? What's going on with this child? What do they need? Well, they need to we need to do less so they can do it better. This, we didn't focus on this last year. So really taking, time to reflect, not just going from one day to the next. Like, there's so much out there now. It's overwhelming. I love to look at curriculums. And so it's sort of, I think, picking something and being guided, Greg, opening yourself up to not lightly, but to where can I find help, and trusting that the Lord will lead you, and that, as a couple, you will keep discerning what's going on with this child. Like and some students have real concerns, like they have a lot of that attention disorder. If somebody coming home after being in a classroom, that's a big change. So taking a step back with the help of a mentor, if you can, or some, I think that's, whether it's through Mother Divine Grace or someone else, you need help. We all do.
Right.
Can't do this alone. And
right. And I think just being straight up, there will be challenges. There are challenges in everything. But what the Lord calls you to, He provides for. And so I remember my oldest sibling and his family, who were a beautiful example of homeschooling. I remember my sister-in-law saying, just because there's a challenge in there, or there's, this thing that happens, that doesn't mean you throw in the towel. Oh, we must not be meant to homeschool. God must not be calling me to homeschool because of this, or this. No, it's like, okay, where is the Lord in this? This is where He has me right now, for this year, right? It's because it is a constant discernment, or should be, for many people. And like, what is the Lord wanting to do with me as parent? How is the Lord wanting me to help form this child that He has entrusted me with through this beautiful opportunity and gift of homeschooling? Not, oh my gosh, this is a challenge, therefore, and I love how you're speaking of individualization. Our daughter, Catherine, struggled so much learning how to read. And we did send our kids to kindergarten at our local parish school. And so, and again, each of them are so different. For Catherine, learning was a real challenge initially. And I remember, even sitting down while she was in brick and mortar, practicing her sight words or reading with her. And she was already being labeled, which was, in my opinion, so unfair and so not right. She, it just took her longer to do things. And I remember sitting in a chair in front of our fireplace back in Erie, Pennsylvania. And when we'd open the book or she'd turn the page, and I just remember that cringe feeling of, oh my gosh, there are how many words on this page that we need to get through. And I just wanted to cry, but that was my real raw feeling. And it's like, okay, I'm going to help her, and I have this extra time with her, and, trying to see some of the more positive things in it. But let me say this, I look at homeschooling, and it's been a gift across the board for our family. But in particular, I could point out for Catherine, who is now, off the charts in so many ways as a student, and amazing, and loves to read. And I feel like if we would have kept her where she was at, she would have been labeled, she would have believed the things that, she was experiencing in the environment around her that was telling her who her identity was and what she couldn't do and what, it took her this amount of time to do. Homeschooling for her in our environment allowed her to flourish and to become, that person, that little soul that God, wanted her to be. And it was through a lot of challenge, and it was through a lot of perseverance, and it was through a lot of tears. But my goodness, she, in particular, articulates so well and so often the gift that being at home learning has been to her, and is very grateful for it.
So folks, you're tuned into Ignite Radio Live over the 5 mighty stations of Annunciation Radio, and you can get all our podcasts at igniteradiolive.com. We're discussing with Denise DeRocher from the Mother of Divine Grace Homeschooling Curriculum Program at modg.org. We're blessed to be talking about homeschooling, particularly, bringing it home. Why not consider homeschool? Just want to emphasize through this, if you have questions, if you want some personal connection on this, don't hesitate to email us, greg@massimpact.us, greg@massimpact.us. And you're also hearing the signs and sounds and ambience of homeschooling as we're actually in our home. If you hear dogs barking and chimes chiming and all that fun stuff, and that's part of the beauty of all this. So we're going through sort of some objections. We talked about that first one of many of us have resistance because of our own life and our personal space and vision. No easy answer, but the idea that God is offering us something. He's offering us as parents to consider, if you will, a vision and an image of our own lives in relationship to Him and our own excellence and in our own homes. We talked about the parent-child relationship, that objection of, I can't do this. And which of us didn't experience this who weren't homeschooling? 2 weeks into COVID, you could see Facebook space lighting up with, well, I hope that the government hands out, hazardous duty pay or psychological counseling, mental health, payments, because I'm home with my kids all the time. So that was even just that alone was, I think, maybe a wake-up call for many of us to consider, have these muscles, these parental muscles that God gave me atrophied, and now being with my children, am I discovering critical things, and have I wrongly maybe assigned the responsibility of that to the system, to somebody besides me? Maybe that alone is a challenge to some of us to consider. Where is that arrow pointing? Are we handing off our kids to systems to do what we're primarily responsible to do, and by the way, most capable of doing? It's just a bit of a challenge. And in the midst of this, again, can't state it strongly enough, we're a community. We're a community on a journey, facing these challenges, facing these struggles. There's never been a greater opportunity to feel connected, to feel supported, to share difficult things, to journey step by step together, to create, if you will, a civilization of love. I think we've addressed the objection of parents maybe lacking confidence or formation in training. Again, in just the sense that we've got a community, Mother of Divine Grace, as an amazing context. Denise here, who is our guest, is a mentor to Stephanie and support. Let's bring up the question of socialization. We hear it said often, I can give testimony to the fact, if you think my kids lack socialization, just do a search on any of their names on any platform, and you'll see how they speak, how they interact, the things that they're doing, if you will, discredit that, compare them, I'm just going to say, with other kids their age and their ability to look an adult in the eye, shake their hand, have a meaningful conversation with them, be engaged in drama, in sports, and everything else outside our home. I'm just punctuating from the Schluter family standpoint. We are extremely blessed at the degree to which they've known themselves and come into place of conversation, relationship with others. But let me just stop monologuing on that. And Stephanie and Denise, what are your thoughts on the question of socialization and homeschooling?
Denise, why don't you define that word for us first?
Just from what I've heard, that seems to be like the main objection, or the last thing, or the first thing that comes to their mind. The question has to be asked, what does that mean? I think you got at it right there, Greg, with, can they carry on a conversation? It can come from, that's how I was socialized, or that it worked for me. The school system worked for me. It's what we're used to. I think a lot of parents out there could attest that that's, certainly not all positive, and more as not positive. But I think, we certainly want our kids to have good friends, and that's sometimes where they need to have them. But I also think the socialization objection comes primarily from that's a picture of me and the kids home all day with maybe the shades pulled and they're in their pajamas and we're not,
Right.
it's homeschooling is more efficient. Kids spend often less time getting done the things that you want them to do to move along in the various subjects, and then they have time for real relationships. I mean, that's what we found in our family. When I have my old friends will meet me, they'll say, "But you loved school. You were like so social," and I am, and or they're not going to have a prom, and they're not going to have. So, not that those things are bad. A lot of homeschool communities try to replicate those, hopefully not just because they're trying to replicate the school system, but because increasingly as kids become, older, I would say middle school and they need good friends, and there's a lot of joy they have in playing music together and dancing together and having great conversations. All those things are possible and potentially even, I would say, better in the homeschool community, and very much a part of the word home, home in schooling. And I know your family is a beautiful example of what you shared about in your discernment. Like, they're going to be light out there. That a lot of people have that too. Like, I want to share my kids, and homeschooling means I'm not going to share them. That is not to think that that's the only way you could share them is by putting them in, like Greg, you were saying, increasingly in a very hostile in terms of like, what is the human person and, sexuality issues. Families do this successfully. They have a very strong family life and strong morals and good, and their kids go through the school system and get it. And they have to undo a lot of that. Why invest your time in working against that?
Right.
When there's other ways to share your family. And I would say kids too, their formation is what you're thinking of. You be light to the world as a family, not like throw your kids out there to the wolves.
Right.
In a lot of cases.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not always.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say, dare I say, in most cases, I mean, we know families who struggle with that battle of trying to undo. It's a fighting against, and to boot, they're paying thousands of dollars for it in many cases, and just the heartache that comes from it. But, some of them will say, well, we can't raise our kids in a bubble. Well, it's not a bubble, but it is a formation, and they'll be out in that world soon enough. And, there are so many ways, like I like how you touched on that negative socialization, if you will, or, how much time is really spent in true socialization. You have some of the lunchtime things, which for many kids is a dreaded experience, some of the interactions, et cetera, even with teachers. For us too, something that was vital in our discernment was, Greg would always say, I don't want them to be inoculated against what true Catholicism is, because most schools, unfortunately, don't give a great witness, or many schools, of what it means to be truly Catholic, and stuff is watered down and stuff becomes social justice purely. And, those are a ton of different topics that we could go into, but that too was a piece for us. Like, we want to give them a fully vibrant, true, good, and beautiful
and attainable
example and witness of Catholicism. And as parents, that's our responsibility. So, and again, we see so many families kind of fighting that culture. They're learning something or trying to, be raised in one thing, and you send them off and they're getting something completely different. And a crucifix on the wall doesn't diminish the lack of truth that they're hearing and experiencing, because everybody's afraid to offend somebody, and, everything is acceptable except the truth, right? And,
Yes.
Again, we can go on and on in that way. I love the opportunities that we've been given too, if you want to call it socialization. We just like to refer to it as formation. But our kids have been blessed with being able to participate in sports, in dramas. And, we're blessed. St. Joan of Arc, shout out to Father Adam Hertzfeld, our dear, wonderful pastor, who there are so welcoming to homeschooling families in every realm, and that it is a valid choice of education right alongside the parochial school there. So that has been a positive influence.
Just an icon on this too. God bless little connections of homeschooling families and parents. I do think that's important. We didn't really avail ourselves to that. We kind of really plugged in vitally to kids who were in brick and mortar schools, just as an example. And Joseph and John Paul in early high school said, we're going to do our own weekly thing. We're going to call it Live It Gathering. Lit is what they called it. They initiated, led, organized in our home every single week, practically, gatherings of kids. At times, 50, 60 kids would be in our house. And it was a phenomenal opportunity to build relationships. It was faith-centric. A number of kids would point to those experiences that they led as occasions of encountering Christ and living it fully and abundantly. It was just a marvelous fabric for them in their leadership, in living out their faith, and connecting socially with others. So one more objection that maybe parents may have, and again, we encourage you parents who are interested in listening, please contact us, greg@massimpact.us. We want to continue this conversation. Know that there's support, there's encouragement, those steps that you're afraid of. If God calls you to, he will provide for it, and it will be a phenomenal experience, 5, 10, 20 years through eternity, which is awesome. Got to say that. One objection, again, that I think remains from the parents is, how does homeschooling integrate or tie into with credibility to colleges?
Well, I can say in the years I've been consulting, I maybe work with, I am counted 50 families. I've never had a college that, come across a college that wouldn't take a homeschooling transcript.
One of the beautiful things that we love too about Mother of Divine Grace is that they do keep transcripts for you. It is an official, accountable, recognized transcript from a certified institution.
And I would say schools, by and large, are going after homeschoolers. Does that answer the question?
Yes, absolutely. Just kind of punctuating that there's no concerns here whatsoever. So, folks, as you're listening, we know we're going to need another program where we really unpack the beauty of the philosophy behind Mother of Divine Grace, Laura Berquist's vision, and really what that entails practically. But do know, and hear me punctuate, there is a curriculum, there are teachers, there's accountabilities and standards, there's encouragement, as you're hearing us tonight with our wonderful family consultant, Denise, discuss this journey. For us, it's been 7 awesome years of doing this. Yes, there's a cost involved, there's a bit of nuts and bolts, and again, you can find out your detailed questions at modg.org, and you can even see there the letter from Laura Berquist and others. But we've been very blessed to at least open the door for those of you tonight who came here wanting and asking the question, should I consider homeschooling? What are some of my objections? And if nothing else, I just kind of leave you with this, fundamental question that we all ought to have as parents is, Lord, what is your will? It's the ultimate question of every person coming before God. Lord, what do you desire? And then let me pronounce, because what he desires, he will provide for. So don't be afraid to ask that question. And it's hard to explain to those who haven't experienced it with all these objections, but that itself may be one of the most powerful things that we pass along to our children, that we faced doubts, fears, reservations, awkwardness. We had the courage to ask the question, Lord, what is your will? And to bequeath to our children that legacy of faith that we did it and they saw month after month, year after year, that it really just happened and the blessing that it was as a result. In the midst of the struggles, the challenges, the fears, the doubts, in this generation, I just ask us and maybe land it with this tonight. Do we not see with the culture, with everything happening around us, a greater need to maybe say, Lord, what are you doing? What is my role in relationship to you as a couple, as a family? What is your design of this tremendous context that you give us as an occasion of forming us for eternal life? So blessed to have you all with us here tonight on Ignite Radio Live. And again, send in all your questions and thoughts to greg@massimpact.us. We would love to get back to you, and we do hope to have a follow-up program very soon. Thanks so much for being with us, Denise. You've been really amazing.
God bless you all, and know of our love and prayers.